The meeting will begin in 1 minute. The meeting will begin in 1 minute. Thank you.
Welcome to the July 18th 4 o'clock informational meeting. I call this meeting to order, and our first item is a report from Councilor Rolfing on the Urbanized Development Commission meeting this past Thursday. Councilor Rolfing.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to go into this a little bit more in detail than a lot of times because I know there's a number of us here that serve on that committee, but people out in the public don't understand what some of these, how important some of these committees are. And so I thought I'd give you a little bit of a depth of some understanding of what really happens in these committees, in this meeting for the UDC, we affectionately call it. For instance, the first major thing we took on was a memorandum of understanding, which allowed, which made Harrisburg and T into major cities is what they're called. They're over 5,000 people now, and so they they have a vote on the board of the UDC and the Metropolitan organization, which encompasses 4 counties around Sioux Falls. So they've been added to the board and have major input now into what happens with infrastructures around the city of Sioux Falls. The other one, the next one was the final draft of the Unified Planning Works Program. And the Unified Public Works Plan, just to give you an idea of I'll read what this says. The 2018 Unified Planning Works Program, affectionately known as UPWP, is a document that describes the annual objectives, work activity products, and planning research studies to be accomplished by participants of the Sioux Falls Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So these are the people that look at, and this memorandum says, okay, what are we looking at to get done in the next 5 years, 1 year and 5 years? And what kind of priorities do they have? Are they a 1 to a 5? When do we put them on the agenda this year, or is it 5 years down the line? That kind of thing. And so that's what this does, and we okayed that final draft. There was one change to that program for the 17 year, which is allowed some professional services money to be moved around because they needed some more money to do some extra planning on a project that they had. Then we've got the nope, I'm going to go another one. And this one is some of the changes. I'm sorry, yeah, some of the changes that were made in years that things are going to get done. So as money comes in from the feds, money is made available from the state, and we have the money available to do things. Things either get moved up, moved back. For instance, as you can probably guess, things have been moved back a little bit. The West 60th Street North from Kiwanis to 4th Avenue project, which is 60th Street North, has been moved to the hinterland, 2036 to 2040. So we hopefully will be able to get that back moved up into a 5 or a 6 year project, but right now it's been pushed way back. 57th Street, 6 Mile Road to 481st Street project, that has been moved to, the effect is to move it to the 46th or 41st day of the legislature, which in effect kills it. It's still a project that is there, but we know that it's not high on the priority right now. I-220 or I-29 exit 77, which is 41st Street, that is projected for between 21 and 25 now at a $22 million budget. That's where they're going to put the diverging diamond bridge in across and hopefully increase traffic flow. I-229 60th Street North over 229 That's a $4.3 million project, and that's still on time. I-229 corridor project, which is all of the median lighting, different things like that. That's almost an $8 million project. That's been moved to 21, 20 to 25. I-229 exit 9, which is Benson Road. That is a $30 million project, and that's been moved to 21 to 25 also. And just two more to give you an idea. Exit 229, exit 3, and Minnesota Avenue, and the Cliff exit on 229. Both of those, there's a $34 million project and a $24 million project, and those have been pushed back to 21 to 25 also. And the question was asked at that time, I hope somebody thought not to do both of those in the same year. Can you imagine what would happen if Cliff and Minnesota Avenue were shut down or were one-laners for a year at a time? Not a good deal, not a good deal. There's a certificate, planning process certification that we did, which just allowed the Department of Transportation and the Sioux Falls Metropolitan Organization to certify transportation planning process, the process that they use of having so many town halls, not town halls, but open meetings so people can come in and take a look at it. You remember they did that on the 26th Street exit this year. We had about 3 meetings over there. Which one do you think will work best, et cetera, et cetera. They certify every 3 years or something the process that they use. And so we went ahead and did that. Then there was a small change on pipe work in Minnehaha, Lake, Lincoln, and Turner counties of various locations. We had to increase, the bid came in a little bit high, so we had to find some money to do another half a million on that. And lastly, this is the plan for 2018 to 2021. And I'm going to leave this stuff up here if anyone wants to take a look at it. In here, you will find every plan is being thought of for those years. Highway, pipe, sewer, that kind of thing, and who's funding it and how much and that kind of thing. It's really, it's for the cities of Brandon, Crooks, Harrisburg, Hartford, Sioux Falls, Lincoln, and Minnehaha counties, and the Regional Airport Authority and the South Dakota Department of Transportation. Pretty comprehensive stuff. And if you really want to take a look at a map of what's going to happen, I have that also. You can take a look there. Lastly, it was very interesting because one of the people from the Highway Department, South Dakota Highway DOT, was there and told us about a some planning that they have been doing, looking at transportation within the state of South Dakota. Not only our road system, our interstate system, our state highway system, but also some of the county roads, some of the lesser roads, but concentrating on the state highways and the interstate system, along with rail. Trucking does, I forgot the percentage, it was a significant percentage, like 80 or 90% of the traffic is from trucks, hauling grain, hauling food, because we're such an agricultural state. And the statistic that was really interesting to me is that from 2006 to 2016, the amount of food that is hauled in South Dakota has doubled. Think about that. People have taken CPR land out of production and improved genetics, have increased yields to the tune that we're hauling twice as much in a 10-year period. That's significant, folks. That's why when the mayor was talking about agriculture being such a large part of even Sioux Falls' budget, it still is. And so we need to be aware of that, and hope the drought will end and we can get some good crops for the agriculture community. So that wraps up my long speech. I apologize, but I thought it was interesting for people to know because it was a good meeting.
Thank you for that extensive report, and I think it was probably about as long as the actual meeting was, but thanks for the detail.
You bet.
So
now they don't ask me again. No.
City Council open discussion. Any items? Councilor Starr.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I sat through that meeting and it was just as long. First of all, Councillor Staley wanted me to remind everyone that this afternoon she is away from us making a proposal to the Parks Board that also meets at 4 o'clock on Tuesdays. So on her behalf, I want to at least let everyone know and let everyone know watching that that's where she's at. So I said I would do that, and I did. So
thank you, Councillor Starr. Any other items for open discussion? Councillor Erickson.
I just want to make sure that everyone is clear here, as well as the council, that item 51 tonight is an audit. It's under new business, and I know there's been some confusion as far as if we will allow public input or not, and what time of the meeting. And so there will be open discussion, public input during that particular item at that time. So it's on item 51, just to make sure it's clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Any other items?
Question?
Councillor Rolfing.
Councillor Erickson, does that mean that we will not take public input during the public input section on item number 51, only during item 51?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And we've communicated that with city attorney as well as the mayor, and everybody's on board.
Wanted to clear it up with myself and also for our listening audience.
Yep, thanks for your question.
Okay, thank you. Any other items for open discussion? Okay, seeing none, then we're going to move on to our first presentation of the afternoon, and that's on waste hauler recycling rate and yard waste policy update by Mr. Andy Berg, and also Jessica Sexy, who is our sustainability coordinator. And Jessica, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today. I am Jessica Sexy. I am the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Sioux Falls, formerly Jessica Lanchin, so I'm the same person that was here last year.
Congratulations on the name change.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I am here today to talk to you about our yard waste recycling policy update. Our environmental manager, Andy Berg, is also here, and Dustin Hanson, our landfill superintendent. So if there are any questions for them in particular after our presentation, they are available. Before we get started, again, thank you for having me here today just to provide you this policy update. I also want to thank the members of the Solid Waste Planning Board for their assistance with this initiative, and also to the haulers and to the recycling industry for their support and their very valuable feedback throughout this process. So I'll get started here. So I wanted to just provide you a quick, can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Just a quick overview of our local solid waste industry, just to give you an idea of where we are. The Sioux Falls Regional Sanitary Landfill is the regional landfill. It services the 5-county area. That's Lake, Lincoln, McCook, Minnehaha, and Turner counties. Any hauler who wants to bring their waste to our landfill and use Sioux Falls City streets must be licensed through the landfill. We currently have 21 licensed private waste haulers that service the 5-county region. We also have 2 licensed private material recycling facilities. They take all of your home and commercial recyclables, so your plastic bottles, your aluminum cans, cardboard, things like that. When they get picked up by your hauler, they're going to go to these 2 licensed private material recycling facilities. If I call them MRFs, MRF, that's what that means. We did offer a tour a couple months ago, I believe it was, and I thought that was really interesting, but they're always accommodating if you're ever interested in, and it's very interesting. Overseeing our local solid waste industry, we also have the Solid Waste Planning Board, and this is the largest mayor-appointed board. There are 15 members on this board. We have the landfill manager, the environmental manager, and myself. And then in addition to city members, we have 2 members from the garbage hauling and recycling industry. Currently, Cindy with DNC, Cindy Neroth with DNC Sanitation is our garbage hauler. And then Jake Anderson with Millennium Recycling is our recycling representative. We also have 3 citizens of the city and 1 commercial business representative, and these representatives have to have no financial interest in the garbage and recycling industry. So a waste hauler couldn't apply to be a citizen representative because they do have a financial interest in decisions that the board would make. Each county also has a representative, and then the South Dakota Multi-Housing Association has a representative as well. This board meets quarterly, but we also do have subcommittees. Each year we try to come up with between 3 to 5 initiatives, and based on those initiatives, we'll form task force or ordinance review subcommittees, and then we also meet regularly with the solid waste and recycling industry as a whole. Just to quickly go over the recycling requirements for the haulers. To be licensed by the Sioux Falls Regional Sanitary Landfill, there are certain recycling requirements that waste haulers have to meet. Each year, the city has a recycling goal for the haulers, and this is based on the recycling rate from the previous year. So really, the industry sets the recycling goal. So if you take a look at that table, in 2016, our overall region year-to-date recycling rate was 23.2% for 2016, and so that became our goal for 2017. So in 2017, our goal is 23.2%. Haulers must meet 80% of the goal. So in 2016, our goal was 23.6%, making our standard 18.9%. You can see there are 3 haulers that failed to meet that recycling standard, and so they are subject to enforcement. This year, with our goal being 23.2%, the mandatory standard is 18.56%. And so haulers have to meet that recycling rate, or they are subject to enforcement. And so really the industry sets the standard for the recycling goal for our region. How do we calculate the recycling rate? We use a calculation that was suggested by the EPA based on the EPA's Measuring Recycling, a Guide for State and Local Governments. So the top equation there is the equation that the EPA uses to calculate the recycling rate. In this case, it is the verified total weight of all recyclable material. So that would include all of your single stream recyclables like plastic bottles, cans, cardboard, plus yard waste, which is composted at the landfill, all over the weight of all the recyclables, plus the weight of all the yard waste, plus our municipal solid waste, or MSW, times 100. And that's how we calculate each hauler's recycling rate and the corresponding recycling goal. For the most part, that verified weight of total recyclable materials is all material that's accepted at either Millennium Recycling or Advanced Recycling. They provide the weight each month for all of the haulers. But occasionally, haulers are able to take advantage of when they have a commercial business who is their customer, who may be self-shipping recyclables. They can submit that, if they have a verifiable weight ticket, they can submit that to our office, and as long as it meets that scope of materials chart that you all have, we can count it towards their recycling rate. So to give you an example, yard waste wood waste is often, haulers can take pallets and take them to be recycled at a pallet recycling facility. So if they had a weight ticket, that would be the first step for me to be able to count that. The second step would be the end use of that pallet. So if it's being fixed up and reused, the EPA says we can't consider that to be recycling. If it is being sent to somewhere like Poet and burned for energy, the EPA does not consider that recycling either. But if it's being mulched and used in compost, then we can count it. So this is really the guide that we use in order to say yes and no, make sure that it's fair. Anytime a question comes up, this is the table that we use. Our new policy, which will take effect in 2018, will change the recycling rate calculation to the bottom calculation that you see there. So we will continue counting, obviously, recyclable material that we get from additional claims, business self-shipped recyclables, anything that the 2 recycling facilities take over municipal solid waste times 100. We just will no longer include yard waste in that calculation. Compost will not be treated the same as recycling anymore. So why would we want to remove yard waste? Yard waste has been banned from our landfill for decades. Cindy just told me before I came up here that it's actually before South Dakota state law banned yard waste in our landfill. The city also banned it a few years before that. So it's been decades that yard waste has been banned from the landfill. We believe that taking the yard waste out of the recycling rate calculation allows for those haulers who have good recycling practices to have an even playing field, and it doesn't allow haulers to continue relying on yard waste in order to meet those recycling standards. We also had strong support from the industry for this initiative, as well as the Solid Waste Planning Board. So it puts a greater emphasis on actual recycling and recyclable materials. Industry support, we began these discussions mid-2016, so over a year ago now. We brought it to the Solid Waste Planning Board and to 2 industry meetings. We solicited all the haulers for feedback on the proposal and we didn't hear from anyone that was against it. Most all showed support for the revision. And in January 2017, the Solid Waste Planning Board voted unanimously to remove yard waste from the recycling rate calculation. And so there's broad support throughout the industry for this. Implementation will begin in January of 2018. Although the board did vote on this in January of 2017, we did want to allow an entire year if any business practices needed to be changed for haulers, and so that they had enough time to implement those. The recycling goal and standard in 2018 will not include yard waste. So when we calculate the goal for 2018, we will not include yard waste in that calculation. So everything will be adjusted. As of January of this year, all of the monthly reports that go out to the haulers have included their year-to-date recycling rate with and without yard waste, so that they know if they don't change their business practices at all, that's likely what their percentage will be without yard waste next year, so that they're prepared to make any adjustments that they need to make. So that's all I have for you, but I'll take questions at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. Questions for Jessica? Councilor Neitzer?
Were you able to calculate how many haulers would have not met the goal maybe in the last calendar year had yard waste not been included?
Sure, yeah. Let me go to that chart. Had yard waste not been included, the haulers who did not meet the standard in 2016 still would not have made it, and there were 2 additional haulers who would not have made it. Affordable Sanitation, which is, they have been bought out by Waste Management, and then RBS Sanitation was close, but they weren't quite there. So we believe that this year will allow them to maybe adjust their recycling practices.
So with one bought out, we're talking about one that was on the bubble, essentially?
Yes, yep.
Okay, and then I don't know how the business works, so some of my neighbors, they'll get the 3rd container, the yard waste container, and they pay, I'm sure, some fee for it. Mm-hmm. The fact that this won't be calculated in it, that's not going to change the determination of haulers whether to offer that service. They can make that go with or without this. I mean, this isn't enough of an incentive for them to keep it or not keep it. I guess I'm just want to make sure that people will still be offered the service.
Yes, absolutely. It's still going to be banned from the landfill, and we see it as an additional service that they can offer to their customers. And so it may give them a competitive advantage in the market if they're able to offer yard waste pickup, but it just won't factor into the recycling rate anymore. The tip fee for yard waste is significantly lower than MSW, and so it's just an additional service that they can offer.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Rolfe?
Just what will the haulers do then with the yard waste that they get? They still will bring it out to the landfill and have it mulched and whatever is part of a compost, but they won't get paid, or they won't have any credits or anything. So the incentive there seems to slip by me somehow.
The yard waste will still be taken at the landfill and going to our composting operations, and so we compost all the yard waste, and it's available for residents for free to accept. I really don't see it, and we haven't heard from the haulers that it's going to prevent them from offering that service to their customers, because again, it's an added service that if they do have the ability to take yard waste, say they have a designated truck for it already, they'll continue to do it.
Just upcharge it.
Yep, or it won't be. They still have to pay for it now as it is, so that won't change at all. I believe it's $10 a ton for yard waste, and so that won't change. The amount that we charge for yard waste won't change. It just won't go into the recycling rate.
Say that again, the $10 charge?
Yep, yard waste, when they bring it into the landfill, it's a $10 per ton charge.
Ton, okay.
And municipal solid waste, I believe, is $37 per ton. So it's quite a bit cheaper to bring in yard waste.
Okay.
Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. This is a really neat reminder, informational piece. Has it gone out, or is it going out with like the utility bill or anything to everybody?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in April, in honor of Earth Day, we sent it out in the water bills, and it was also available. If you get the e-bill, then it was available on the e-bill. We also offer them to the haulers for free, and we've also created dumpster stickers that haulers can pick up for free. Last year and this year, we offered that, so they can put them right on their recycling containers, so you have a visual reminder every time you go out what does and doesn't belong in the recycling bin.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for
Yes,
Jessica?
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Starr.
First of all, thank you for inviting us for a tour. I found it quite fascinating. I think Councilor Neitzer was with my group, and it was very informative of watching the sorting and the separating process and the amount of work. And when we look at overall rates, it still comes down to the consumer. What does a hauler do to encourage me to recycle at my home?
That's a good question. We have built into our ordinances what we call pay-as-you-throw. And so they are required to offer a cheaper rate for a smaller container for trash. And so if you're producing less trash and hopefully in turn producing more recyclables, you're supposed to have a lower rate for your trash bill. We also have an extensive public education program for recycling to try to encourage the public to recycle. And by diverting the materials from the landfill that can be recycled, that allows us to keep our tip fees low because we're saving airspace in the landfill and extending the life of the landfill.
Okay. It just seems like we're putting a lot of the at least the enforcement part on the hauler rather than the individual homeowner who's creating the issue. So balancing that and seeing some of the things, I know we've increased our recycling just as part of the tour, understanding exactly what we can do and what things are included. So talk a little bit about the enforcement part that goes to those haulers that aren't meeting the minimum. What is the process and how do we work with them to get them where the goal that we're setting for them?
So each quarter, if a hauler is below the recycling standard, they're sent a quarterly report via certified mail so that we know that they receive it and notifying them that they are below the recycling standard. They're not penalized at that time, but we want to make sure that they're aware. At the end of the year, if they are still below the recycling standard, the first year they are surcharged $1 per ton that they brought to the landfill the previous year during the year that they failed to meet the recycling standard. The second year, it's $2 per ton, and then the third year, we take away their license. We've never had to do that before, but that's our enforcement process. They're also required, if they fail to meet the recycling standard, to submit a recycling corrective action plan, and we meet with them and go over that with them.
Cool. One more quick thing, if I can, Mr. Chair. Talk a little bit about electronics recycling. I had a situation, one of the nonprofit groups that I serve with does used clothing pickup, and a lot of times we're working with people who are moving their families out of, or their elderly parents or out of apartments in their homes, and there becomes a large pile of electronics. And so it's difficult for those things to obviously to go to the electronics recycling. So is there some way we can continue to improve on that? I know I've talked to Mr. Lubers several times. I know as a city it's expensive for us to also recycle those things, but finding a way that it doesn't just end up next to the bin at the apartment complex is where I saw some of the last time I was out helping do some of that pickup. So is there anything we can do to help with electronics when they become, because what ends up happening, at least in a couple of the cases that I've been on, it's adult children who are trying to take these and they're not residents of the city, and so it's difficult and there's some costs that's, it's the old TVs, the old stereos. It's amazing some of the stuff. I can't wait to get into my parents' basement and find some of the electronics that they have. But overall, is there something that we're able to do better and make it more affordable to recycle electronics?
I'm going to let Andy take that.
Hi, Andy Berg, Environmental Manager. As far as affordable for residents, if you're cleaning out your parents' home, that type of thing, it's free to drop off the electronics at the household hazardous waste facility. They scan a driver's license so that they can confirm you're in the 5-county area. They also track so that people aren't abusing it by dropping off, 10 TVs, something like that. Where we run into an issue is where folks have rental property or something like that, where it is technically a business, and that's a business expense. So we don't take those because we don't have the space for it, and also it drives the numbers up greatly because, like you said, we do incur the cost of disposing of those at a recycling facility. So we have worked with folks with like neighborhood cleanups, those type of things, we work with our downstream party that we're contracted with, and a lot of times we'll have them work directly with that neighborhood cleanup to take them free of charge. Once again, the city pays for the transit costs, that type of thing, so that they're still getting that benefit. The only ones that we really try and crack down on are, like I said, rental property and things that are associated with business practices.
The hardest part about that is my friends in the multi-housing association and have those rental units, they feel like it's getting dumped on them because it's not necessarily their business expense because someone left it outside in the dumpster as they're moving out and moving on. And so I know that's been a bone of contention for them. And, you know, we end up putting a reverse incentive on them to maybe hide some of it in their trash or some of those things that we want to keep out of the landfill, doing that. So as we move forward in tight budget times, how do we do that? And I know that's an ongoing situation we try to.
And we have Mr. Lubers, as you alluded to, has brought that to us, and we don't have a great solution, but that is one of the things we are looking at. How can we address those unique circumstances where it's not a business, it's not an individual? How do we handle that? And, you know, we try and be flexible with it, but we don't have a direct policy for something like that. But we are looking at ways to maybe grow the program. You know, in a perfect world, we like to take the business as well in some way, shape, or form, but those are things we're looking at, how we can address that through either policy or possibly expansion of the facility. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Okay, very good. Jessica, if you would come back up, please. Is there an estimate on how much we have extended the lifetime of our landfill with our recycling efforts? Oops, well, maybe Andy shouldn't have sat down yet.
I know when I started, we were at, I want to say 2064, and the last I heard I think was 2080. Am I wrong? And I started 4 years ago, and we've continued to improve recycling, the amount of materials that we recycle every year. It'd be hard to pinpoint exactly if that is truly from recycling alone or if it's from improving our technology at the landfill. Is that anything else? Okay. But I would definitely say a majority of that is from diverting materials that can be recycled.
Oh, very good. Thank you. And the reason I had you come back up, because it was not too long ago that I had received a very complimentary email about a presentation that you had done or had given to a local group. And then one of the individuals in that group took the time to email, and I believe it came to the full council. And I took the time to respond to the individual and thanked her, for, number one, for a nice positive email, and also acknowledge the service that you provide to the City of Sioux Falls and the good job that you do in your work here for the city. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge you and thank you for a job well done. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate that.
You bet. I think no other questions. We'll move on to our next item. The Sioux Falls Area Humane Society cash handling audit. And in fact, the next couple of presentations will be given by Ashley Vandenberg, our internal auditor. So first one, Sioux Falls Area Humane Society cash handling. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I'm Ashley Vandenberg, City Internal Auditor. I'll wait. Okay. You should all have a hard copy of the audit? No? Yes? Nope? Okay. We'll wait.
It is attached to SIRE.
There we go.
That's okay. There is no rush. We've got plenty of time this afternoon. We do not have a committee meeting following our informational, so we're in good shape.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. The Sioux Falls Area Humane Society Cash Handling Audit Report was presented and accepted by the Audit Committee on June 29th. This was an audit of the cash handling procedures at the Sioux Falls Area Humane Society. The city has an agreement with the Humane Society that they will provide shelter services and vet care for animals brought in by the city's Animal Control Unit. The agreement also provides that the Humane Society is authorized to charge and collect impounding fees and boarding fees for the animals brought in, and the money collected is then remitted back to the city. Any animals brought in can then be released to their owner upon payment of the daily boarding costs and impoundment fees. The agreement also provides that the Humane Society is one of the designated agencies that's allowed to provide animal licenses on behalf of the city. Each owner of a dog or cat that is 6 months or older is required by ordinance to be licensed. The Humane Society is to charge and collect a fee for each animal license they issue, and these fees are also to be remitted back to the city. They can also charge a convenience fee of up to $5 in which they can keep. The fee amounts are set by city ordinance and are as follows. The boarding fee is $8 a day. The impoundment fees range from $30 to $75, and the license fees range from $5 to $75. The objectives of this audit were to determine if cash handling policies and procedures are in place and adequate, to determine if cash is collected, secured, transported, deposited, recorded, and reconciled accurately, and to determine if management oversight mitigates the risk of weak internal controls over cash receipts. Based on our review of policies, our interviews with management, our observations and testing of transactions, the audit resulted in 6 recommendations. These recommendations were suggested in order to strengthen controls around the cash handling process. 2 of the recommendations were implemented prior to the issuance of this report. 3 of the recommendations will be implemented by August 2017, and 1 recommendation will not be implemented due to it being a limitation with the accounting software used by the Humane Society. Again, we thank the Animal Control Unit and Humane Society for their time and assistance during this audit. Any questions?
Open it up to questions. Councilor Erickson.
I'd just be curious which one is not going to be implemented. I know it's because software, but I just was curious.
Could you go through those recommendations
Yep, we can go through each
publicly?
of them. So recommendation 1, policies and procedures should include specific criteria for the waiver of fees. Fee waivers should be properly documented, approved, and retained on file. That one will be implemented by August 1st. Deposits should be made in accordance with the Animal Sheltering Services Agreement, and that was on a biweekly basis. And they have already put that into place by now, July 1st. The third one, cash receipts should be issued in sequential order. That's the one where it will not be implemented because the software doesn't allow for sequential ordering of receipts. Recommendation 4, internal controls over the physical security of cash should be enhanced, and that should be implemented by now. Recommendation 5, all reconciliations should be dated and initialed to demonstrate they were completed, reviewed, and approved. Any reconciling items, shortages, or overages should be investigated, resolved, and documentation should be retained. That one was already implemented before the report was completed. And recommendation 6 was voided receipts should be properly supported, approved by management, and retained on file. The individual voiding a receipt should properly document the reason for the void, and management should date and initial the receipt to demonstrate their approval. And that one has already been implemented as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Councilor Rolfing?
Rolfing, yeah.
Well, no, it's...
Okay. Ashley, the one that is not being implemented, you said is because of a software situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how delicately to say this, but how important is that for the safe cash handling procedures that we need to implement or have available in the city?
sequential receipts is important just to know if there's a gap in the sequence, then you can see why one's missing, which will identify fraud. However, if they implement the other controls, that will mitigate the risk that that control would provide.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. I just wanted to be sure that Counselor Erickson didn't have a follow-up, so, okay, very good.
Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Neisser.
Did they have any estimate or any thought whether they could fit it into the budget, that particular item, or is this a prohibitively costly item?
It was costly. I don't think management was not gonna implement it.
Okay, and I would just say I did go on about a 2.5-hour tour last week. It was a lot longer than I would have thought, but it's hard to leave when you have all those neat pets there. And they had invited myself to come, and I had reached out to them, and Corey, the executive director, invited me to bring my wife, and I said, no, we have 2 dogs, and because she cannot go to the Humane Society, not go home with more pets, so we would have been over the limit by the time we got home. But no, they do wonderful work. I learned a lot. The city was in possession of 2 potbelly pigs, actually, and I have pictures of those. They were potty trained, and you could walk them on a leash. They took them for walks. You can't have a potbelly pig here in Sioux Falls unless we want to change that, but somebody did. But no, they do great work, and yeah, I just wanted to kind of give them a shout out because it was a wonderful tour for anybody. And it's amazing the amount of things that they do. They're just wonderful.
Yes. Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions? Counselor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just looking at the fee schedule on the list. So the amount of money that this audit covered was in 2016 was $24,127. So that's
Correct.
all of their cash receipts that we do?
Correct.
Just seems like we dived in pretty deep to protect a little bit of money by the time we're done. When you were saying that we would cost a significant amount of money to add the sequential
Right.
numbering, that it doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not sure I think I skipped class that day in my auditing and business background, but the amount of time and not putting a lot of money into reviewing that amount. So more of a statement than a question.
Kim Schroeder, Internal Audit Manager. I just wanted to address that this was an audit that was requested by management and agreed to last year as part of the audit plan, and also that we do look at dollar amount from a risk perspective, but also assets such as cash that are susceptible to fraud. So that's why it kind of hit the spectrum. So.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for that report, and I know that you're up for the next one as well. The next item, last item on our agenda is the ambulance service contract audit, and Ashley, you're going to present that as well.
Yep. The ambulance service contract audit report was presented and accepted by the audit committee on June 29th. This was an audit of the ambulance contract between the city and Paramedics Plus. This audit focused only on 2 areas of the contract: response times and mutual aid services. The main objectives of this audit were to determine that the health department ensures Paramedics Plus is meeting response time requirements of the contract and that proper mutual aid procedures are in place. The first few pages of the audit report provide background information on the prioritization of 911 calls, response time requirements, a description of exemptions, and mutual aid requirements. I'm not going to go through these pages in detail, as this information has been provided to you at recent meetings. The scope of the audit was January through December 2016. Our audit work included a review of the contract, an interview of the city's emergency medical quality assurance coordinator, an observation of the daily review process and the daily pulse call, detailed testing of a sample of calls exceeding the response time requirements, and verification of the monthly compliance reports presented to REMSA. For the results of the audit, we found that the health department has various procedures in place to ensure Paramedics Plus is compliant with response time requirements of the contract, and we determined that proper mutual aid procedures are in place as they have 2 signed mutual aid agreements with other Minnehaha County ambulance services. And again, we thank the Health Department and Paramedics Plus for their time and assistance during this audit. Any questions?
Okay, open it up for questions. Councilor Erickson?
I was just gonna, since we don't have it in front of us and I don't have my computer up, I was just looking at the results and as far as if you had suggestions or anything that was going to be implemented differently. I guess I didn't hear that, but I didn't know if you had anything.
No, we did not have any recommendations as a result of this audit. They were compliant.
Right, that's good
And
news.
yes,
Thank you.
in both areas that we audited, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Starr?
Yep. One of the things that stood out to me in the audit report was the talk about mutual aid and then the agreement that's in place with Metro Communications and the dispatching of that mutual aid. And one of the things that we did as a council when we toured Metro Communications is we were told by the staff there that it didn't matter what mutual aid agreements were in place, they were going to dispatch the closest unit. And they didn't ever look at what the mutual aid agreements are that are in place. And my concern is that yes, they're in compliance with the contract by having these mutual aid agreements in place, but they're with Del Rapids, who has 1 unit in their community that's at least 30 minutes in response time away, I would think. Humboldt has 1 unit and is there. Was that something you looked at as part of the audit report? Or the audit process, I guess, is the question that I would have?
The process was just to make sure that they were compliant with the contract, and that meant having at least 1 or more formal agreements.
So looking at this process, we looked at just the contract, not necessarily what was practical and what was in the best interest of the community.
Yeah, that would be outside the scope of the audit of the
Thank you.
objectives.
Councilor Erickson?
I think, were we at the same one? I'm not sure. I know we all went differently. I can't remember who was with who. But during our time, I just remind everyone that the mutual aid contract, I can't remember, I always call him Aaron because he looks exactly like my cousin. But Paul, as well as his staff, communicated to us that it doesn't matter if we have a mutual aid contract in place or not, they'll call whoever is closest. And so really the contract, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just kind of trying to make a statement and make sure I understand this, and Jill's here so maybe she can address it as well. But the way that the contract is written is we have to have mutual aid, and so that box is checked. Maybe for some it doesn't seem as practical to have Del Rapids or wherever. Depending on where that accident is, it might make sense to have mutual aid with them as well. But they had stated during our tour that it doesn't matter if we have mutual aid or not, we're going to call whoever's closest. Really, the intent of the mutual aid also is the protections to making sure that they are being reported that properly, and that those mutual aid contracts come with agreements that they have to then report to REMSA. Is that right? Maybe can you give me a little snapshot? I know we're a little bit outside of the audit conversation, but I just want to make sure that we don't go down a path that opens up another can of worms that's just not true. And so really, 1, anybody can be called for mutual aid, and 2, there's oversight with REMSA with those mutual aid agreements. Is that correct? Okay, Jill is nodding her head yes, so I will state it in the record that Jill says yes. That was my concern, to making sure that you wanted to make sure that they have mutual aid. You saw that they did. It is compliant with that. And, you know, if we have 15 mutual aid contracts, I mean, the more the merrier. It's just a matter of that's their role, their job of getting them together. And so you looked at the 2 we had, and we're checking that box off, so to speak. Not to say we shouldn't have more or do more, but that's just meeting the requirement.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Councilor Rolfe.
One of the things we need to be careful with in this kind of situation is that when the scope of the audit is completed or is defined, which in this case is to make sure that the contract, 2 areas of the contract were that the ambulance service was in compliance with those. is not to try to change the areas that are in compliance. That's the job that we have and that REMSA, or when we do an RFP next time, when the contract is signed, that's our job. If we want to raise the rate or the compliance rate from 90 to 92 or 94 and stop some of the things that say because there's a 10-foot drift in front of there, we can't get there within the time, so we exempt that one. That's our job. That's the people who put together the RFP, et cetera, et cetera. It's not audit committee's job. It's maybe the health department next time we do some of that. But right now, we need to just assure the people, because everything that's been happening, that Paramedics Plus is doing a superlative job of keeping up with and adhering to the contract stipulations that they were asked to. And so they're making it 95, 98% of the time, on time, and doing a great job, along with the system that we've got put together of police, fire, ambulance. Works good. And yes, there will be exceptions, but for the most part, and 98% of the time, it works very, very, very well. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows the scope that they did the audit on. They did a great job, and that Paramedics Plus is doing a great job on it also. So thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, very good. So in other words, they're 100% in compliance. You had no recommendations forward.
With those two areas, yes.
The areas that you
sure.
examined. Great job. Thank you very much. Thanks. Well, that's the last item on our agenda. So this meeting is adjourned.